best way to start your day is with Barry on 4CRB, each weekday from 5 till 9.
4CRB News.
It's 10 o'clock. Good morning, I'm Richard French. An ongoing trade war between China and the US is expected to increase the price of complex goods like lawnmowers, which require multiple components to be assembled. Manufacturers are likely to face challenges sourcing these parts, driving up production costs. Chinese goods are facing a 104% tariff in America for failing to drop a reciprocal 34% levy on US goods. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says nearly 70 countries have requested negotiation talks in the space of a week.
These countries realize they've gotten filthy rich over the past few decades by imposing substantial tariffs on American-made products and ridiculous non-monetary barriers to block out American industry.
The findings of an investigation into one of Australia's worst tourism accidents will be released today. An experienced pilot and 3 of his passengers were killed when 2 helicopters conducting joy flights on the Gold Coast collided in January 2023. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau will lay bare exactly what led to their deaths. Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton have gone head-to-head in the first leaders' debate with 24 days to go until the country heads to the polls. The leaders answered questions from 100 undecided voters in Sydney's West. Mr Albanese came out on top, receiving 44 votes to Mr Dutton's 35. These voters think the debates will play a crucial role in deciding.
Good morning and welcome to Talk Back on 4CRB today. And today we discuss the state of the state. We have our state member for Mermaid Beach, Ray Stevens, of course.
Welcome, Russ. Great to be here.
Mental block there.
Yeah,
wow.
You're good.
Nice to have you with us. And we're inviting, of course, the people to phone in and take part. It is a talk-back program, and that's how you politicians work, isn't it? You hear what the people have to say and then act upon it. So don't be silent. Ring in, make your comments and ask your questions of Ray while he's with us. The number's 55 20 8888, 55 20 8888. Ray, last time you were with us, you were on a crusade. You had the view tax in sites, and I think you're still moving in that direction. You're anti-tax.
Well, I always try to minimise the tax burden on residents, and actually, when I was Mayor Russ, I'm the only mayor of the Gold Coast ever to bring the rates down. And it was down equivalent of 5%.
Wow, that's a record to have.
Yeah, it's a great record, and I'm very proud of that because bureaucrats, whether it's council, state, or wherever, love to spend money because the more money that they collect in tax gives them the better opportunity to spend things and obviously make themselves look a lot better in terms of their employment, etc. So it just is disappointing for me to see the council going down the high taxing road, introducing new taxes such as the view tax. That we're talking about a bed tax, and also I just see that the council is trying to introduce a dumping tax, which we always rejected because we were frightened about people dumping outside areas rather than paying the fee to go in and dump at appropriate areas, and that still is the case in my view. So that was why we were always against the tax. But obviously the bureaucrats love collecting money so that they can spend on different projects and type of things. And unfortunately, it reflects back on the mayor and the councillors. And at the moment, I'm hearing they're calling him taxing Tom Tate. So, it is disappointing and. I'm just not sure if that view tax is legal. We're getting some advice. Oh,
you haven't got a finding on that yet?
Getting some advice on the matter, and we'll see where we go with it, yeah.
5520 8888 for you to have your say while we're chatting with Ray Stevens today about the state of the state. Some of your colleagues are going to be in town for a meeting, a town hall type meeting at Palm Beach tonight. Jared Blay, Laura Gerber, Herman Vorster. Talking about the extension of light rail and how the locals feel about it and that sort of thing. The big problem has been the prospect of federal funding to meet that, $7 billion now?
That's the estimated cost at this stage, and the federal commitment to that funding would be 55% of the $7 billion. Very expensive in those bridges, etc., that have to be put across Currumbin and Tallabudgera for Light Rail 4. What we have found out since we've been in government, and the former government, Labor government, never told the good people of Palm Beach about it, that almost 253 houses and properties would have to be resumed in some form or other to make Light Rail 4 work. But of just recently, the Albanese government pulled Light Rail 4 off their infrastructure projects for the future. So even if there was a decision today that no business case has been done by the previous government, and even if there was a decision today to do a business case and go forward with it, then there's no federal government funding. So without that federal government funding, the project will not happen.
Hypothetical case, we're in the middle of a federal election.
Correct.
Would a change of government, an LNP government in Canberra, be more inclined to make that funding?
I haven't seen any commitments from the Dutton LNP opposition in terms of the Light Rail 4. That would be a matter for them to look at a business case, or should they become the government. The difference between being in government and being in opposition, which Dutton and the LNP are, is the fact that you don't have the facts and figures to go forward with a proper decision on the matter. So whether Light Rail 4 would be funded by a Dutton LNP government, that would be a matter to follow on a business case if there is a business case to be done.
Well, of course, one of the major causations for the whole tram situation was the population density imposed upon the city by government. What about the future plan in that direction?
Well, yes, that was the catalyst for the idea of a light rail going, the spine of the Gold Coast, if you like. And yes, it's had plenty of usage. Was never in doubt that it would get plenty of usage. It was TransLink's busiest bus route, straight up and down the highway, and light rail obviously improved that number as well. So the buses don't run up and down where the light rail goes, obviously.
Yeah.
So it was all about catering for population growth and upping the densities along the seaboard, which is, the most popular area that people want to live, close to the beach. And you've seen the massive growth in high-rise development east of the highway, the Gold Coast Highway. But there have been a lot of problems associated with that massive growth in terms of transport, cars, parking lots, if you like, and also parking around for residents, etc., in those particular areas. So with the Light Rail 4, the densities are constrained by the airport. Obviously, you can't go as high with planes flying around the place, and of course, a lot of the high-rise sites have been taken up already, from Burleigh south through Kirra, Palm Beach, etc., down to Currumbin. So there are not the accommodation benefits of massive increases in densities along the Gold Coast Highway at this stage. The council has approached government, Gold Coast City Council has approached government about increasing densities west of the Gold Coast Highway. And which would change a lot of the residential areas west of the Gold Coast Highway into accepting higher densities, 7, 12, and maybe even more, 20 or 30 stories in some places close to the light rail. So that would require a change to the Gold Coast City Town Plan. There is a review currently. It got stalled under the previous Labor government, but there's a review currently that will go forward, and I think it'll take probably about 2 years to look at the densities. But we will also look at other areas, greenfield sites in that particular increase, because at the moment we've got 10,000 hectares growing cane, between Australia's
Now,
third
this
largest
has
city.
been one of your hobby horses
Has
for
been
a
for
considerable
many,
time.
many years, Russ, and it was deliberately, the Labor Party deliberately put a green handover, which is basically a farming area, mainly because they didn't want to put in infrastructure there, and they certainly didn't want to see it go into water-based development, which it could well do, going close to the Moreton Bay, of course, as Sanctuary Cove, Hope Island, the Broadwater, all of those areas, which actually ended up being Liberal constituencies. So, that is an area that is absolutely prime for development, and it shouldn't be left in a rural area. I mean, if you go back to the Gold Coast, we're all rural areas.
Of course, yes.
Arrowroot, the cotton gin mill, that
Dairy.
Yeah, dairy. Those types of rural activities were the Gold Coast until people found it as a lovely place for climate and geography. With the beaches, etc., as a tourism paradise. Now, what we have to make sure we don't do is spoil that tourism paradise by turning it into Sardine City for movement about the city. So the light rail at the Department of Transport's own estimates will take a maximum, including buses as well, maximum of 7% movements of the population. 7%. I think over in Amsterdam they've got 14%. It's probably the world's leader of public transport.
Right.
So in other words, you're putting 93% of the population in a car travelling around a very lineal city. We've got 3 north-south highways, if you like. So it really puts a roadblock in terms of movements from north to south, where I think it's 42 kilometres of the city, which is beachfront, without going up to other areas, inland areas. So we just got to be careful that we don't overcook the development of the city in those particular areas. We've got to look to other greenfield sites to expand the population growth that is coming to the city, and we accept that. But the bottom line is that, you just don't jam them into high-rise so it's uncomfortable for everybody else to live.
Yes, well, our news story this morning covered the first approval of a high-rise in Pimpamar, surrounded by low-set houses and that sort of thing. But according to the planning boss, Mark Hamill, it's just the beginning, and we'll be reaching for the sky.
And we've seen high-rise around other areas, for instance, around the Royal Pines golf course area. But the old town planning theory, which I did a little course many years ago in town planning, was the fact that if you go up, you have green space around. But that's sort of gone out the window a little bit now with the current planning scheme. The high-rises are jammed up pretty well close to right next to each other with not much green space around. So that was the original thinking of going high-rise, but that has changed. But we will see, some high-rise developments in other areas close to transport, because people are getting used to the fact now that that is, the way they have to live.
Halfway through the show, Ray, we do want folks to ring in and have a chat with you about things. We're going to talk about youth crime just after we hear this message. So the number of folks to ring in is 5520 8888 to have a chat with Ray Stevens as we discuss the state of the state in Talkback today.
Cost of living continues to impact our home budget, but selling your car is now easier, more effective, and has zero associated costs when you deal with Adam Hall. Just one call and Adam will come to you. There is no call-out fee. There is no roadworthy fee. There are no mechanical costs. And after a friendly chat, there's instant cash for your car and no fee for taking your car away. Yes, it's now easier and friendlier to sell your car to Adam Hall. Check out the real Adam Hall. Log on to adamhallbuymycar.com.au or call 0404 290 617.
Talk back with Ray Stevens, the member for Mermaid. 5520 8888 is the talkback number. We'd like to have you ring in and have a chat with Ray, and you can ask the questions. But we have promised them we're going to have a look at youth crime. How is the Crisafulli government moving in the direction of coping with that?
Yes, already we've put in some stringent laws. They started last year, December, when we had our first meetings, and last sitting week, just the week gone by, we put another tranche of more laws that will apply to youth crime during the adult time. So which included attempted murder, manslaughter, rape, those types of heavy activities, if you like, in terms of the adult crime. So what we are doing, there will be another tranche to come as well, and I am told by my police informants, if you like, that out of the 1,000 kids that they've identified as issues across Queensland, they've already managed to put away 200 odd offenders, if you like, on crimes that they've convicted, that they've caught them on. Obviously, that'll take time to go to court, and,
I see, yes,
and then it'll be up to the magistrates, etc., and the new judges to interpret the new laws in the proper way that they should be, rather than having their hands tied about dealing with the kids and keeping them out of society, because we removed all those issues which prevented magistrates and judges from locking the kids up, and they just kept letting them out and letting them out. There was no consequence, and obviously the kids thought it was fine to reoffend. So now, and actually carjacking was another one of those
additional ones.
That have come through, which is a very important one, because that's what they seem to love putting on TikTok, is the stolen Porsche or Audi or whatever they seem to think is wonderful to put on TikTok and show how clever they are. But those kids, not only that, what we are doing is putting a lot of effort and money into education for these kids that are recidivist
Yes,
offenders.
that's what we were anxious to know, is what are you going to do with them?
And that's a very important part of getting them out of that criminality that is in their mindset. And a lot of these kids come from very broken homes and disastrous backgrounds. I think 80 and 90 of them are wards of the state, which gives them no sort of direction whatsoever in terms of...
That's an unfortunate outcome of the fostering situation, isn't it?
It is, very much so. And we know that drugs and alcoholism are big parts of our today's society, and those kids are born into those circumstances, and it's very tough for them to come up with the right priorities for their life for the future. Now, what we're doing is investing large sums of money into programs. I think there was $100 million put forward by the Minister for Youth Justice in terms of programs to re-educate these kids and point them in the right direction, find them jobs, give them education for the younger ones, etc., and make sure that they understand that there is a good life out there to be had without this life of crime that they think is fun and gives them a bit of a sugar hit, if you like, while they're with their mates and stuff. And it's all a bit of peer pressure stuff that goes on. But what we're trying to do is say, hey, there is a good life for you to be had. Stay out of trouble with the law. And that's a very important part of our progression with our new laws to make sure that the youth crime disappears to a large extent, as we promised coming into the election. That was what we were elected to do.
There's I think a common feeling out there in the community that governments often talk about large sums of money as being the solution to problems, but the programs and things that you've mentioned, they do come with a cost, don't they?
They certainly do, but the cost of not doing anything is greater.
Yep.
Okay, the cost of these kids running wild and repeat offending. In fact, it's a couple of years now since I've had an updated figure, but they said a death on the road, there's a $500,000 investigation. For a death on the road. So, that sort of expenditure in terms of, going through the whole process of why it happened, etc., and who was at fault, etc., tells you that prevention is a lot better than putting a lot of money into a cure. And the cure would be building more and more detention centres,
right,
and more jails, which would be expensive. I think the last one just opened recently was 200 and something million, and that houses 80 young offenders. So there's some serious money going into the cure. Not that we have to stop doing that either. Yeah. There are some. The police tell me that about 20% of those 1,000 young criminals across the state will be criminals for life. Now, what we have to do is make sure they're not in the community, that unfortunate 20%.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect world out there, and there will always be criminals. So what we have to do as a responsible government is keep them away from the community as much as possible.
55208888 if you'd like to have your say while Ray was with us here discussing the state situation. 55208888. Still time to get into the show and have a comment. One of the major future efforts of the government will be towards the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Theoretically, Brisbane's Olympic Games, but do a benefit to us?
Well, Russ, it came as the Brisbane Games bid when former Premier Palaszczuk and the government put forward their bid, but with a lot of assistance from the federal government and a lot of the sports and the International Olympic Committee, Australian representatives, of course. But they made it quite clear that it would be Olympic Games for Queensland.
Right.
And that is changing. In fact, even at the last Olympic Games in Paris, there were events held, 100 kilometres away from Paris and those types of things. So, the fact that we have come out with a new plan, and it's a plan that's been locked in place for Queensland to host the Olympic Games, means that many, many regional areas will benefit from this enormous expenditure that we are putting forward as a state government, following up on the decision that was made. Certainly couldn't pull out of it, to make our Olympic Games in Queensland and Brisbane as the host city the best Olympic Games ever, as they always say. At the end
of course.
The Olympic Games, as Sydney was at the time. So I think it was Juan Samaranch who used to be.
That's right, yes.
The
year 2000.
best games ever. So we want the best games ever to showcase Brisbane and Queensland as the best place for people to visit, and it's like a showcase, if you like, when the spotlight comes on the Olympic Games for the world. It is the biggest event in the world, and as a Gold Coast, with an hour down from Brisbane, we're going to benefit enormously as well from Olympic events that are held here. In fact, I was over the other day with the Minister for Sport and the Olympic Games and Racing, Minister Mander, over at the Hockey Centre in Labrador, and that is where the Olympic Games will be. Well, and to be honest with you, there was a mayor back a long time ago, Russ, that allocated funding for the first international surface there, which is still there today. I forget his name, but it sounded very similar to my name. So we put in the first hockey field over there of international standard. Now they're going to put in another 2 hockey fields to have the Olympic Games here on the Gold Coast. There are other events here as well, and so the Gold Coast will be a great beneficiary in terms of even people staying here, families staying here. I think and the media will be spread right across Queensland covering the events. So, and the Athletes Village will be a big part of it as well. And so we are going to see a lot of benefit come 2032.
Yes, a lot of thought is put into, or mention made of, the legacy that comes from the Games post-event.
Correct, and that's the important part, that things that we build are not temporary, that they are a permanent legacy, if you like, and that's why they've chosen a brand new stadium at Victoria Park to bring Queensland into the 21st century as far as facilities go for major events following the Olympic Games. So we'll have our own Melbourne cricket ground, if you like, or Sydney's Homebush Stadium. I forget what they call it. It changes its name weekly, depending on who sponsors it.
Well, that's right, yes.
But so Victoria Park will be a state-of-the-art stadium, and I believe the cricket and the AFL will move there from the Gabba after the Olympic Games. So, this is planning for the future, and it's been well received right across the regions. We've gone from Cairns right to Whitsundays to the sailing, and what better view, if you like, of Queensland than looking at those wonderful Whitsunday islands, etc., that people be sailing around.
Prior to the Commonwealth Games, for example, here, there was a thought amongst the populace in general that they should pack up and go home and leave it to all the visitors because it was going to be a great intrusion in the lifestyle, when in effect it's really an opportunity for locals to roll up their sleeves and get into it.
Yes, I think that'll be the way, and certainly there'll be lots of volunteers required. Particularly when it's only in Brisbane, it's a little hop away from the train station, if you like, and so there will be wonderful opportunities for the Gold Coasters to enjoy the Olympic Games. And Russ, all I can hope is I'm here to watch it myself.
Just before you leave us for today, Ray. We've had a calamity, of course, in the floods and that sort of thing, and then we had the cyclone ahead of that, and so that means that the state government has quite a weighty list of grants and recovery funding and that sort of thing to get through. How are they going?
Well, they put a submission into the federal government on Tuesday, as I understand, yesterday, for federal. There's $1.2 billion, I believe, in terms of federal funding coming, and that will be for things like the Gold Coast beach replenishments. I think there's $10 million coming there. So, but poor people out in the southwest, if you like, of Queensland are suffering still today, and their claims will take a lot longer to work out how much they've lost, etc. We've still got the floods-affected areas, particularly Ingham in the north, that came through those big wet, and Townsville as well, in terms of it's just been a really big disaster season, as happens from time to time with Mother Nature. We can't control her. She has a mind of her own, and this is just one of those times when we're just going to have to be patient in terms of seeing the recovery, if you like, for Queensland, but it will happen.
And, of course, it's just another big bite on the budget, isn't it, when these things turn up? Without
a doubt, but, governments have to expect these type of calamities happen from time to time, make sure they have the financial capacities and not borrow themselves stupid as other governments have done prior to us being in government, so that you've got no money left to pay for these types of calamities when they do come.
Ray, we thank you for your time again, bringing us up to date with state activities. We always welcome you along here. And, of course, we remind listeners that the program is available for review online on the 4CRB website, 4crb.com, almost before it's over.
Always a pleasure, Russ. Lovely
Thanks, Ray.
to be here.
See you next time.
Bye.